In Mulong village, north of Liuzhou City, Guangxi, the old man pointed down the narrow valley and told me how the crippled American bomber had struggled its way up and towards the village so many years before. Then the plane made a final desperate but losing climb over the mountain behind the village and fell awkwardly into the valley behind and out of sight. But they knew that it had crashed. As he spoke, I could imagine the scene. Soon, people in the villages are showing me things salvaged almost 60 years before from the wreck. 50 caliber casings cut out and made into part of an owl handle. The owl point going through the primer hole. A sturdy pot made of melted aluminum alloy. A retractable blade to shave an old man's head, made of a small piece of stainless steel and a couple pieces of aluminum. A thin strip of brilliant stainless steel, with English markings and patent numbers still visible, made into a saw blade. In another nearby village, we see large flat pans to thresh rice, made of the skin of the plane, with the original rivets flattened to fill the holes, boxes for storage, and more. A heavy landing gear strut, which with no better use found, was simply used as a weight to hold down a thatched roof. Practically not a house in either village is without something from the wrecked plane. Truly swords into plowshares right before my eyes. These people have made good use of the wreck of war. They show us the house where the men had stayed, partially collapsed and abandoned now. The young crew of that aircraft had dramatically arrived in an isolated stretch of rugged Chinese countryside during the midst of war, and somehow the whole crew had survived. When 6 of the crew were brought together in Mulong village, this tiny community that had never before seen a foreigner erupted into activity. The crew stayed in the village. Then after a day or two, a local official and his team came to take the flyers out and back to the Americans. At dinner I asked one elderly eyewitness how he thought the Americans must have felt in those faraway days of World War II after falling to the earth in this patch of rugged rural China. He thought for a second, then replied courteously, "Well, you know, they were still young, not quite men yet." He was looking back with a now grandfather's wisdom, through a then 14-year-old's naive eyes. They were afraid. When we brought them back together in one place, they hugged each other and cried. Before we leave, the villagers remind us that they want to know what happened to the flyers that visited all those years before. They came through here, but we know the war was still going on. As far as we know, they went back to the war after they left us. Did they survive? Did they die? We want to know. I promise to find out and send the information back. Tell us their names too, some ask me. I get the date of the crash so that I might have a starting point, the evening of October 16th, 1944. Starting our research, it turned out that the plane and crew had not been forgotten in the U.S. either. Through the internet, and with the help of some kind people we had never met, We were able to slowly learn more about this B-24 bomber and its crew. Eventually, we were even able to meet a surviving crew member, Robert Zolby, who was a ball turret gunner on the B-24. That afternoon, they had taken off from Liuzhou to do a nighttime radar sweep for Japanese shipping in the South China Sea. But then one, and then sometime later, another of the B-24's 4 engines had failed. And in the end, they had had no choice but to bail out, just when they could see the lights at the base, which had been turned on to help guide them in.
Johnson said, his exact words, pilot to crew, bail out, this is my third, or good luck. Michener was up trying to get the radar working, and he come flying off the deck, and I was on the catwalk, and I can still see him going out, arms out and legs out when he went out, and this is 1 o'clock in the morning. And I thought, well, he knows what it's all about, I better follow him. So I think I was the second one.
Once on the ground, Robert Zolby hooked up with another crew member, Reed Dean. Although they were not in the area of Mulong village, lack of water eventually forced them to take their chances and enter a nearby village.
We went in the village, I went in the village, and there couldn't have been, I don't remember exactly, there couldn't have been more than 8 or 10 huts in this little village. And as soon as I walked in, everybody disappeared. They running in the hut. And so I didn't know what, but here some kids, young kids came out, started coming out, and then the elderly people started coming out.
Eventually, the villagers walked the 2 men out of the mountains until they ran into Chinese guerrillas, who in turn led them to a town and handed them over to the county magistrate.
But he made us understand there was a Chinese-American rescue team on the way from Chongqing to pick us up. Well, we ate. He had a meal for us, and we figured out it was a 14-course meal that they had, and we were hungry, and of course we ate.
The whole crew did indeed survive at Mulong village, but 2 months later, 6 members of that original crew took off from Suichuan Air Base in East China on another B-24 on a mission over the Taiwan Straits, and they were never heard from again. They did not return from that mission, and no evidence has ever been uncovered to explain exactly what happened to the crew or where they are resting today.
They had the same as our shower room. They had 55-gallon drums on the roof.
Much information and help came from Jim Brunson, who has been carefully collecting information on this crew for years, devotedly rebuilding an understanding of what happened to his older cousin, Technical Sergeant James Vaughn, a radio man on that crew. James Vaughn was only 21 years old when he was lost over the sea. For someone you love to disappear is the hardest thing. You cannot know for sure if they are alive or dead, and you cannot stop hoping, even when you tell yourself there is no hope. It is an aching in-between world for the living, for those who have a hidden place in their hearts that still waits, though we plead for it not to. Even the U.S. government could not consider them dead for 1 whole year, and James' official date of death is listed as December 19th, 1945. James was loved. He was raised on a small farm in the southern state of Texas. A natural athlete, taking part in American football, basketball, and track, he entered the U.S. Air Force right out of high school. He was one of those special few people who are well liked by all, and his friendship was especially treasured by those who knew him. Indeed, so much so that after the war 3 different men all named their sons after James, a total of 4 sons, in honor of one young man. But for one small cousin, who was only a boy when James vanished, James was even more special. He was a hero so big in his 6-year-old eyes that even 58 years could not make him smaller, could not take away the vivid memories and dreams, and could never make the love dim. The names of the members of the crew that parachuted that dark night are now known and have been told to the people in Mulong village. Many others now know them as well.